It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
You can never say too much might be a little strong in the fact that number two is your relationships are struggling.
Yeah, this one I think is sad. I mean, it's obviously sad when someone isn't living for the present and they look back with regret. But this one I feel like makes me really, really sad because we see this happen so often in our country and in the folks that we interact with and people we hear about that talk to us about their finances. It's a big deal.
Yeah, and don't take our word for it. I mean, the research shows that the biggest issue a lot of families deal with when you're talking about spouses is just the financial decision making. You know, and you can see right here on the screen, we have 36% of married Americans say money causes the most stress in their relationship.
And so, and again, that's so sad because I think about when it comes to like personal finance and cohesion, I get excited thinking about how that works inside of a marriage or inside of a family. Because remember, ultimately, money is just a tool to allow you to do the things that you want to be able to do. And so what's so great is when you have spouses come together, say, hey, what do we want to do? What are our goals? We want to be able to send our kids to college. And we want to be able to retire at this age. We want to go on this trip. We want to travel. It should be something that gets excited, that brings the family together. But unfortunately, that's not the case. It often is something that divides and causes issues inside of the family.
Let me give an experience share for how this manifests when we talk about you could be saving too much, could be impacting your relationship. Because a lot of you guys are like, look, if you're a hyper saver, if you're a financial mutant, you're actually going to have more assets, so probably fighting is going to be less. This should be a positive thing. That's true, but let me give you the negative side, is that I actually had someone I know who approached me because they obviously know we're in money all the time, and they said, look, my spouse is considering leaving me. And I said, well, what's going on? He goes, she said one of the primary reasons that is just irks her and has turned into a major issue is I still have her give me receipts.
And what's the like socioeconomic? I mean, is this a couple that's doing okay?
Yeah, doing fine. But I think, like I said, financial mutants, and we'll typically we sometimes we can get too carried away with too much of a good thing. So the things that realize when you're in your 20s and 30s and you're trying to get to building the healthy habit of saving and investing, it probably does make sense that you're doing traditional budgeting where you're watching every dollar that comes into the financial household and you're making sure it fits into your plan. But there will come a point, and I talk about this, is that you graduate from budgeting to more of a cash management plan where I'm hoping that more of your money is just automatic for the people, and the fact that you've got your saving strategy automated, you've got all the money going into the right buckets at the right time so that you don't have to ask your spouse or loved ones to give you every single receipt, because what was great in your 20s to create a healthy habit might turn into that pet peeve that actually separates a relationship because you're trying to make sure you're not getting too many lattes. You're making sure they're not spending too much when they go to the convenience store and fill up the gas tank and then pick up a bag of combos. I mean, this is the type of stuff. It's that little teeny tiny stuff that can fracture a relationship. And that breaks my heart because money can be a positive tool if you know what its why is, but don't let the good habits of budgeting turn into a dark thing that actually divides the relationship.
Yeah, I'll share sort of a personal experience and I learned this firsthand, and it's something that I've had to like practice to get better at. When I bought my very first house, I bought it super, super young, and I was super tight, and I was focused on saving and not other things. And so when I bought that house, I went to Home Depot, and I bought the $8 paper blinds. You know the ones I'm talking about, where you put the adhesive up, and it's just like an accordion of like tissue paper that comes down. My wife and I, we got married, and that was our house that we ended up living in. And she was like, hey, are we going to do so? I was like, no, we're not going to do those blinds work perfect. Why would we change this? So we kind of progressed in our marriage, and we ended up moving from Georgia up here to Nashville, and we were looking for houses and stuff. And she said, hey, I want to have a conversation. And I was like, okay, yeah, sure. She goes, I really want us to buy a house, and I'm really excited about us talking about starting a family and doing all these things. But you recognize, like, one of the things that's important for me is when we buy a house, I really care about it feeling like a home. So if we're going to like do this, are you going to be okay if I want to buy blinds and I want to do window treatments? I was like, blinds? I can go get you everything for $40 so we can have all the windows covered. I had to realize that her goals and what she found fulfillment in were different than mine, and that was okay. I was not going to force her to conform to what I thought was right, because I thought window treatments were a waste of money or whatever it was I thought.
I'm
at that
finding
time.
myself being highly entertained here because I'm thinking about, because I know your wife, and I know, now what's funny is you're bougie now, but back then you
But back
probably
then I
were
was
more
not
of a
bougie.
Spartan, and then I get a visual of, how when you go to like Mexico or some other places, the furniture will actually be poured into, it's like concrete, like bed frames,
Yeah,
concrete
yeah.
couches. I have a visual of you with your paper blinds, and when they're building the house, you're just like, hey, can we just go ahead and just pour
make some chairs for me.
there? Let's make this.
I love it.
But it is one of those things where that is a solid experience share, because I do think your life evolves. And it's important to understand, because communication, we all know, anybody who's been married for an extended period of time, or have a significant other, because there are people who comment all the time saying, don't get married, it's horrible. And I'm like, there was obviously, you need
Something
good
happened there.
communication. You need to understand, because I think marriage is outstanding as long as everything is lined up and it's working out appropriately. Now, look, I know there's outside stuff that happens, but make sure it's not you tracking receipts or doing something that's a positive thing initially that turns in and manifests into something completely negative. Pay attention to that stuff.
Now, marriages aren't the only type of, we've talked a lot about the marriage. That's not the only type of relationship that can struggle. If you're too focused on saving for the future, saving for retirement, you kind of fall into that miserly, I'm going to argue that it can affect your friendships in a pretty big way.
Yeah, I mean, and look, I'm not talking, I understand when you're in your 20s, we're all broke.
Yep.
I mean, most of us are broke. So it is like that Friends episode where you go out to eat and you order the bisque, like some tomato, soup, and you're like, whew, okay, man, my dinner should only be $12. But then you've got
good cup of
your
bisque.
buddy, or you're going to a nice restaurant.
That's a nice restaurant.
That's what I'm thinking about. Is that
Yeah.
I remember
You
when I
order
was
the
in my
cheapest thing
20s,
on
you
the
go
menu.
to a
Yeah,
nice
same thing.
restaurant, and you're like, I'm going to trim this thing down. Maybe I do a soup, maybe I do a salad, and then you pregame or do whatever because you can't afford drinks but you have a buddy who's doing the appetizer, they're doing the surf and turf, they're like bottle for the table. I get when you're in your 20s. That you might, on ticket splitting especially, that's going to be tough.
The way, how would this be? And you're like, we want this on 13 separate tickets.
But I will tell you, as you get older, and I think this is interesting how it transitions, there will come a point where as you start having success, that you become more, I feel like it just happens naturally. You become more generous where you will buy a round of drinks for your friends. Or maybe instead of y'all worried about who ordered what, y'all just split the ticket evenly. And I'm saying there that you have to know where that level is. But my point and my advice for this show on saving too much is don't be the miserly friend that everybody knows is super tight and saving, but you never buy that round of drink for your friends. Not because you're worried about paying your mortgage or your rent, but because you're just tight.
That's right.
Because I think that can have an impact on relationships. Be healthy about it, but just make sure you're checking yourself to make sure, hey, am I treating others like I want to be treated? Because I got to tell you, the older and more successful I get, that whole adage of it's better to give than to receive. There's something about abundance in the fact that you being able to do things for others that I think can be even more powerful as long as you've checked the boxes on all your financial order of operations. Who cares if you're spending a little bit extra to do something for someone?
And look, again, this is sort of a personal experience share. Early on in my 20s, I was known as the tight one. Like I was known in my group as, Bo, he's so tight, squeaks when he walks. And I didn't love, I didn't like people thinking of me of that. Now, I was making wise decisions, that sort of thing. I kind of like now that it has changed a little bit. They know that, hey, if we go, okay, yeah, Bo he'll probably pick up a round of drinks or, or even if, because, I'm a water drinker, right? Like I just struggle with like ordering sodas or whatever when I go to restaurants. Even if our meals aren't equally yoked, we go with another couple, I'll just say, hey, let's just split down the middle. And that's okay now. I like that I've been able to transform into that instead of still being tightwad Bo that my friends remember from my early 20s.
I do have one exception that tightwad ways have not gone away from me. I don't mind splitting tickets evenly when I go out to eat with other couples, but there's one thing. I don't even care if you order the nice meal, but the fancy bottles of wine.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Especially because if you're not drinking the wine, you're like,
What? I didn't order that. I don't want to do that.
That's the only exception to this. So if we all go out to eat, now I'm probably gonna have everybody order like the crazy expensive bottle of wine because they know that this. It still
That's your
kind of
pet
gets to
peeve.
me.
That's
Yeah,
right.
it bothers me a little bit.